When you're looking for a deal or meeting a stranger online, it's easy to assume the best, but sometimes things take a dark turn. In this video, we recount 3 of the most chilling Craigslist encounters that will make you think twice about answering an ad. Watch to uncover the horrifying details of these real-life encounters and the unsettling truth behind the internet's dark side. In November 2013, 42-year-old Troy LaFerrara responded to a seemingly innocent Craigslist ad. The ad, posted by a young couple in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, offered companionship and conversation for those feeling lonely. To Troy, who lived a quiet and uneventful life, this sounded like a welcome escape from his routine. What he didn't know was that this ad would lead to his brutal murder, orchestrated by one of the most chilling husband and wife duos in recent history, Miranda and Elite Barber. Miranda Barber, 19 years old at the time, was the one to correspond with Troy through Craigslist. She painted herself as a friendly, open-minded woman who wanted to meet new people. What she didn't share was the dark agreement she had with her husband, Elite. The couple had a twisted arrangement. They planned to lure an unsuspecting man to his death, claiming it as part of a satanic ritual. Elite later admitted to police that they wanted to kill someone to celebrate their 3-week wedding anniversary. Troy agreed to meet Miranda on the evening of November 11, 2013. They planned to have dinner and talk, but Miranda had other intentions. Before leaving, she and Elite carefully planned every detail of the murder. Elite would hide in the back seat of their Honda CR-V, hidden beneath a blanket, and wait for Miranda to lure Troy into the car. That evening, Miranda picked up Troy in Sunbury, Pennsylvania. They drove around for a while talking. Miranda later described Troy as polite and easygoing, which made what followed even more horrifying. She drove to a secluded area, under the pretense of wanting privacy. Unbeknownst to Troy, Elite was lying in wait. Once they reached the isolated spot, Miranda gave Elite the signal. He sprang from the back seat, wrapping a cord tightly around Troy's neck. The attack was sudden and brutal. While Elite strangled Troy, Miranda plunged a knife into his chest over 20 times. The couple later claimed that Troy fought for his life, but the combined assault was too much for him to overcome. His final moments were a horrifying mix of confusion, terror, and pain. After ensuring Troy was dead, the Barbers disposed of his body in a residential alley in Sunbury. They left him there, lying face up, and then went to clean the car. Miranda later claimed that the murder gave her a rush, but Elite described the experience as messy and nerve-wracking. The pair spent the rest of the evening cleaning the car to remove bloodstains and evidence, then casually went out for dinner to celebrate their horrific act. Troy's body was discovered the next morning by a homeowner who called the police. The scene shocked investigators. The number of stab wounds indicated a crime of intense rage or calculation, but there were few clues at first to point to a suspect. Troy's cell phone records eventually led police to Miranda Barber. She had been the last person to communicate with him, and investigators quickly zeroed in on her and Elite. When police questioned Miranda, her calm demeanor was chilling. She initially claimed she had acted alone but later implicated her husband. She admitted to posting the Craigslist ad, selecting Troy as their victim, and carrying out the murder. Elite corroborated the details, adding his role in the strangulation. Both confessed to the crime with disturbing detachment. The most shocking aspect of the case came when Miranda claimed that the murder was part of her involvement in a satanic cult. She told investigators that she had killed at least 22 other people across the United States as part of her work for the cult. While no evidence was found to support these claims, the confession sent shockwaves through the media and the public. Miranda's claims painted her as a cold-blooded killer who enjoyed the act of taking lives. She showed no remorse, describing how she felt empowered by the murder. Whether her satanic cult story was true or an attempt to sensationalize her crimes, it added another layer of horror to an already gruesome case. Miranda and Elite Barber were arrested and charged with the murder of Troy LaFerrara. During their trial, the prosecution presented a strong case, including their confessions, forensic evidence, and Troy's cell phone records. The defense tried to argue that Miranda was a victim of Elite's manipulation, but the evidence showed that she had been an active participant in the murder. Both Miranda and Elite were convicted of first-degree murder. They avoided the death penalty by pleading guilty, but were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge described their actions as pure evil, noting the calculated and remorseless nature of the crime. The murder of Troy LaFerrara remains one of the most disturbing cases linked to Craigslist. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting strangers online. The barbers used the anonymity of Craigslist to prey on an unsuspecting victim, turning a tool meant for connection into a weapon for their own twisted desires. Troy's family was devastated by his loss. They remembered him as a kind and hardworking man who didn't deserve such a cruel fate. The story of Troy LaFerrara's murder is a horrifying reminder of the evil that can lurk behind seemingly innocent online interactions. Miranda and Elite Barber's actions were not only calculated but also senseless, driven by their own warped sense of thrill and celebration. In the spring of 2009, a story broke that would forever change the way people viewed online ads. Philip Markoff, a 22-year-old medical student at Boston University, was arrested for a string of violent crimes that led to the shocking moniker of the Craigslist killer. This case sent chills through the community, revealing how a seemingly ordinary young man living a normal life could be hiding a dark and dangerous secret. Philip Markoff appeared to be living the dream. He was an intelligent, promising medical student, engaged to be married, and on the path to becoming a respected doctor. However, behind this facade, Markoff was harboring a dangerous secret, a fascination with violent fantasies. He had begun seeking out victims through Craigslist, using the site's erotic services section to find women who advertised as escorts or masseuses. The first reported crime occurred in April 2009. A woman, later identified as Anna, posted an ad on Craigslist offering escort services. Markoff, using the alias Jimmy, responded to the ad and arranged to meet her at a hotel in Boston. Anna arrived and was greeted by a man who appeared to be the friendly, well-mannered medical student that Markoff portrayed himself to be. However, this would quickly take a chilling turn. Once inside the hotel room, Markoff allegedly pulled out a handgun and demanded that Anna hand over her belongings. He tied her up, but as he was rummaging through her things, she managed to break free. Anna ran out of the room and immediately contacted the police. Miraculously, she was unharmed, but the robbery and the violent nature of the encounter left her shaken. The police began their investigation, but initially, they didn't connect this crime with anything more serious. It appeared to be just a robbery gone wrong until a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Less than 2 months later, Markoff struck again. On June 27, 2009, he targeted another woman, this time at a different hotel, also in the Boston area. This victim, known as Trisha, had posted a similar ad on Craigslist. Markoff met her at the hotel, where he again tied her up, but this time the encounter would be far more violent. As he held Trisha at gunpoint, Markoff allegedly demanded money and jewelry, and he proceeded to rob her, tying her hands tightly with plastic restraints. This time, however, things went terribly wrong. Markoff was in control of the situation, but something triggered him. The attack on Trisha was more vicious than before, and he left her with physical wounds that would take weeks to heal. But once again, Trisha survived. She managed to escape her restraints and flee, but not before noticing key details about Markoff. Trisha was able to provide the police with a description of the attacker, a man with a college boy appearance, which led investigators to believe they were dealing with someone who was not a typical criminal. Markoff's crime spree, however, didn't stop there. In the following weeks, he would continue his spree of violent crimes, each time becoming bolder and more reckless. On August 15, 2009, Markoff escalated once more, committing the most brutal crime of all. This time, he targeted a woman named Megan McAllister. Megan, like the others, had posted an ad on Craigslist offering massage services. Markoff responded to the ad and arranged to meet her in a hotel room. When they met, he attacked her, as he had done with the others, but this time, the violence was far more intense. Markoff reportedly strangled Megan, and when he realized that she might be dead, he fled the scene in a panic, leaving her for dead. Megan, however, miraculously survived. She was discovered by hotel staff, unconscious but alive. She was rushed to the hospital where doctors fought to stabilize her. Megan's survival marked a significant breakthrough in the case, as the police were finally able to identify similarities between this crime and the previous attacks. As they connected the dots, investigators learned more about Markoff's pattern. They discovered that he was using Craigslist as his hunting ground, selecting women he knew would be vulnerable, often those advertising massage services or seeking companionship. His use of the site was not limited to just finding victims. It became clear that Craigslist was where Markoff felt emboldened, where he could hide behind an anonymous persona. The breakthrough came when authorities identified a key piece of evidence: a link between Markov and his previous victims. Investigators were able to track his cell phone records, and they found that Markov had been in close proximity to the victims' locations during the times of the crimes. As the evidence piled up, the police began to focus their attention squarely on him. The investigation revealed that Markov was not just a student and a seemingly upstanding citizen, he was also a man with a dark side. During a search of his apartment, police discovered a stash of items belonging to his victims: stolen jewelry, personal items, and the firearm that had been used in the attacks. They also uncovered disturbing evidence that indicated Markov had been planning these crimes for some time. Markov's arrest in late April 2009 shocked the nation. He was charged with the murders, robberies, and assaults. The authorities revealed that, through DNA evidence and victim statements, they were able to link him directly to the attacks. The media dubbed him the Craigslist killer, and the case was widely covered, especially as investigators uncovered more about his disturbing behavior. However, the case took a tragic turn in August 2010 when Markov was found dead in his jail cell. Authorities ruled his death as a suicide, but questions remained about whether he truly ended his life or if foul play was involved. His death left many unanswered questions about his motivations, the extent of his crimes, and how many women may have fallen victim to his manipulations that we may never know. The Philip Markov case is one of the most chilling examples of how something as ordinary as a Craigslist ad can be used to lure unsuspecting victims into dangerous situations. It also serves as a stark reminder of the darker side of the internet and how it can be exploited by those with malicious intent. While Markov's true motivations may never be fully understood, the haunting question remains: what drove a seemingly normal, intelligent man to commit such horrific acts? And how many more people like him are lurking behind the anonymity of the internet? In 2011, Scott Davis had hit a rough patch. The economy wasn't great, and he was out of work with bills piling up. Desperate for a fresh start, he turned to Craigslist, a platform known for connecting people to opportunities, but not without its risks. That's when he stumbled across an ad that seemed like a beacon of hope. The posting was simple but enticing: a live-in caretaker position on a sprawling Ohio farm. The job offered free housing, a generous salary, and the promise of peaceful, solitary work. For Scott, who was looking to rebuild his life, it sounded ideal. He responded to the ad and soon received a reply from a man who called himself Jack. Jack claimed to be a preacher who had inherited the farm from a recently deceased relative. He said he needed someone trustworthy to help him manage the property. Over the phone, Jack seemed friendly and genuine, his voice calm and confident. "Can you meet me in Marietta this Saturday? Pack your things and we'll head to the farm from there," Jack said. Scott didn't hesitate. He packed his belongings into a single bag, eager to start over. When Saturday came, Scott arrived at the designated restaurant, his heart pounding with a mix of nerves and excitement. Jack was waiting for him, just as he'd promised, but he wasn't alone. "This is my nephew Brogan," Jack said, introducing a quiet teenager standing awkwardly beside him. Brogan was tall and lanky, his face expressionless. Jack seemed every bit the friendly preacher he'd claimed to be, charming and polite. He talked warmly about the farm and how much he was looking forward to having Scott's help. The mention of his nephew helping with chores added a layer of authenticity to his story. After a quick meal, the three piled into Jack's car. The conversation flowed easily at first, but as they drove deeper into rural Ohio, Scott began to notice something strange. The farther they drove, the more isolated the area became. The bustling streets and suburban neighborhoods gave way to empty fields, dense woods, and long stretches of road with no signs of life. Scott tried to shake off his growing unease. He reminded himself that farms were often in remote locations, but when they turned onto a narrow dirt road surrounded by thick forest, he couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in his gut. "We're almost there," Jack said, his voice calm. Eventually Jack stopped the car and said they'd have to walk the rest of the way. "The road's too rough for the car from here," he explained. Scott hesitated but followed. The three of them started down a narrow trail, the trees towering overhead and blocking out most of the sunlight. Jack led the way, chatting casually about the farm. Brogan stayed behind Scott, silent as ever. As they walked deeper into the woods, Scott noticed a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The casual chatter stopped. The forest was eerily quiet. Then he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. Scott spun around just in time to see Brogan raising a pistol, his face still emotionless. Before Scott could react, Jack pulled out a gun of his own. "What are you doing?" Scott shouted, his voice shaking with panic. Neither man answered. Jack aimed the gun at Scott and pulled the trigger. The first shot missed, grazing Scott's shoulder. Adrenaline surged through him and he bolted into the trees. Bullets whizzed past him as he zigzagged through the dense underbrush, his heart pounding in his chest. Scott ran blindly, the sound of his attackers crashing through the woods behind him. He spotted a large fallen tree and dove behind it, trying to quiet his ragged breathing. Jack and Brogan were close. Scott could hear their voices as they searched for him. "He couldn't have gone far," Jack muttered. Scott lay perfectly still, his body trembling with fear. He knew that if they found him, they wouldn't hesitate to kill him. Minutes felt like hours as he waited, listening to their footsteps crunching through the leaves. Finally, the voices grew distant. When Scott was sure they were gone, he crawled out from his hiding spot and began making his way back toward the main road. It took Scott hours to navigate his way out of the woods. Exhausted, bleeding, and terrified, he stumbled onto a rural road and flagged down a passing car. The driver, startled by Scott's disheveled appearance, immediately called the police. When investigators began piecing together Scott's story, they discovered the chilling reality of Jack's operation. Jack was actually Richard Beasley, a career criminal with a dark past. Along with his teenage accomplice, Brogan Rafferty, Beasley had been using fake Craigslist ads to lure victims into the woods. Their scheme was simple but effective. They promised lucrative job opportunities to desperate men like Scott, only to rob and murder them once they arrived. Scott had narrowly escaped, but others weren't so lucky. Police uncovered shallow graves in the woods near where Scott was ambushed. 3 men had been lured by similar ads and killed. Richard Beasley was arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder. His accomplice, Brogan Rafferty, was also taken into custody. During the trial, Brogan testified against Beasley, revealing the full extent of their horrifying crimes. Beasley was sentenced to death, while Rafferty, a minor at the time of the murders, received a life sentence without parole. Scott Davis survived, but the ordeal left him deeply shaken. He later spoke out about his experience, warning others to be cautious when dealing with strangers online. These stories showcase the dark side of online interactions, reminding us that even seemingly innocent exchanges can lead to unimaginable horrors. They are terrifying, real-life examples of how a person's life can change in an instant after trusting someone they shouldn't. Thanks for watching, good nightmares and stay scared.